So I will kick this off. So today we're going to be kind of talking about, kind of alluded to it in the 5-minute intro, just kind of leveling up your WordPress skills and maybe doing a little bit more advanced things without going whole hog into full on coding and that kind of thing. So so we're just going to go through a few things today. So I'm going to move to the next slide, Terry. All right, great. So what we're going to cover today is basic editing of a theme. I think what Patrick went over was awesome, and like this kind of builds on it. So I think that's fine. So I think what Patrick went over is awesome. And quite honestly, anytime I need to go tweak some CSS, the theme customizer CSS is awesome and super cool. But we'll kind of show some other reasons to maybe move beyond that. So so we'll move on. We'll talk about how to edit a theme, what the basic editing of that is, how to do that in the WordPress admin, and maybe why not to do it in the WordPress admin, but if you want to do it in a pinch, you can. And then also doing it over FTP, which Dash went over very briefly, which was perfect. So we'll talk through that, and then we'll kind of move on to the last part, which is creating a child theme. Which is, I guess, the most correct way to do this. It's kind of levels of complexity, and depending on the project is where you're going to go on that. So maybe the first question would be like, what can you edit in a theme? So there's a few things, very basically anyway here. So CSS would be the first thing. Again, Patrick kind of went over, like the basic CSS stuff there, but it's really kind of a question of where do you put it at that point. So you can edit your CSS. Also, you can edit JavaScript too if you want. So if there's something, some sort of behavior on the front end, like when you click on something expands, or if there's like a slider or something, that's all JavaScript. So you can edit that kind of thing. And then you can also edit PHP. Which kind of changes the site functionality. We'll go over what the functions.php file is. One thing that I am kind of thinking about right now is the one thing we did kind of missed in here was HTML/template files. We won't go over that too much in this presentation, but just know that's kind of a fourth thing you can edit in a theme. So why would you want to edit something in a theme? Or why would you want to put these edits in the theme rather? So again, like I was talking about, if you have, 1 or 2 selectors or something, or even 10 like CSS selectors you want to add to a site, throwing it in the theme customizer is perfectly great, like perfectly respectable. But if you find yourself doing a lot of stuff and adding a lot in there, it could get a little unwieldy to work directly in the customizer. And it might be easier to move that stuff to a CSS file. And there's performance reasons for that too, but we won't get too much into that. So you can add that to the style.css file. Could be, again, if it's too unwieldy, it could be a little easier to use, a little bit easier to use in a separate text file. And then we had a few examples here. We are going to share these slides after. So these are both of these last 2 bullet points are links to articles of how to do these things. So changing the length of the excerpt, for example. So like when you go to your blog homepage and you get the little excerpt underneath the title, let's say, and you want to change the length of that, there is some little PHP snippet you can throw in there. And then another example would be like the archives title. So like by default, if you go to a category page, for example, it says like category : and then like foobar or whatever. So if you want to like remove category : there's a little text snippet for that. We do have a link to that in here. So once we send these slides out to everyone, you can be able to click on those and see those full articles.
Great. So we talked about the customizer, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the theme editor. So we have some screenshots coming up after this, but I want to talk about some pros and cons of using the theme editor. So pros are that it's easier to get to, and then easier to get to is maybe in relation to some of the other things that we're going to be talking about. It can warn you of bad syntax in your CSS and PHP, which is very helpful. And it really hasn't been in WordPress that long, so this is a big improvement. And it has a friendly UI, which we'll see momentarily here. Cons are, if you screw something up, especially in the PHP, you could break your site, and that's never fun. And that's of course where the backups come in. No, no, it's actually, it can be even bigger than that. So we'll talk about that as well. So in the theme editor, so when you first go to appearance and then theme editor, you will get this big scary message that says, "Oh my gosh, don't do this." And you might want to take heed of that. um, or just there's a link here on how to make a child theme, which we're actually going to link to later in the slides. You might choose to go that route anyway, but if you're just making a really small change and you're confident in what you're doing, or maybe it's a local site that you're just playing with, definitely go ahead and click the I understand button. And then you will get something that looks like this. So there is a text editor within WordPress, and it defaults to pull up the style sheet. And you can see here is the style sheet from the 2021 theme. And so you can make changes in here to the CSS. For the most part, making changes to the CSS, you're not going to break anything too badly. But if you do edit a PHP file, you could actually run into some trouble where you're potentially getting, the white screen of death, which we never want to see, but it does occasionally happen. If, say, you copy some PHP code in from a website that you find, and you just kind of throw it in there to see what it does, and it doesn't work out. If that happens, what you can do is turn to FTP. So FTP or SFTP, which SFTP is a secure protocol. This is file transfers to and from your website. So you do need an FTP client for this, like FileZilla or Transmit or CyberDuck. Your web host, depending on who you have for a web host, if you have cPanel, for example, with your web host, you have access to a file manager, which is essentially a web-based FTP client. So there are multiple ways that you can get into actually touch the files on the back. I like to say that it's kind of like the back end of the back end of your website. So WP admin, that WordPress dashboard is kind of the back end of your website. But then even more back end to that is getting in and touching the actual PHP files or the other files that live on your website. So there are obviously pros and cons to using FTP. Some of the pros are that it is safer. So if you put in some PHP and it messes up your site, you can get things back really quickly. You can just undo and then push it back up to the server again. It's much easier to edit the files. In some, if that's how you edit, how you're used to editing files. If you've never used an FTP program and you don't know how to edit in VS Code, for example, that might not be the easiest way. The cons, it is harder to set up. You have to get all of your your FTP information from your host and get that set up and set it up exactly correctly in order for you to get into the server. So it can be a little complicated if you're not familiar with it. You might also have to set up a text editor, like I was mentioning, to get that syntax highlighting, to make it just easier to read what you're writing and what you're editing. I will add a bonus for the developers in the audience. If you're doing a lot of development, and we recommend that you actually use Git version control and continuous deployment, which is obviously not something we're going to be talking about here, but we do not recommend that you go through FTP for editing. So this is a screenshot of what FTP looks like. This should look very familiar to you if you're on a Mac. This looks like the Finder. If you're on a PC, it would look kind of like the Windows Explorer. There are other programs that have a slightly different look to them, but it's basically you're just looking at files. There isn't really a GUI in for WordPress in this. And we will actually have a demo of this. If you're interested, during our breakout session, we will be demoing how to FTP your files back and forth and edit that way.
Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is how to create a child theme. So what a child theme is so it lets you make changes to a theme. So like as we were showing before, we were kind of showing how in the screenshot of like the 2021 theme where Terry was saying like, oh, you could add some CSS to this file. The word of warning there is if you added some stuff there and then I should say when the 2021 theme gets updated, all your stuff would get overwritten. So the solution to that is to use a child theme. The main bare bones child theme is only 2 files, which is kind of cool. I always love WordPress's ways of the lowest, like the way to get it, the entry into the door for these things. It's always like to make a plugin, make a theme. It's always like 1-2 files. So, so we'll go over that. There's also a link there to the child theme docs on make.wordpress.org, which is awesome. So definitely take a look at those. So to build the child theme, we're going to create a style.css file. We're going to add a little bit of metadata to the top of that in a PHP comment, and then we'll create a functions.php file that will enqueue the style for what enqueue means is essentially put the CSS on the front end and activate it essentially. And then we'll activate the child theme. So what can you do in a child theme? We'll be able to add CSS, add PHP. In this case, we'll show how to change the excerpt length. And one other things you can do as well in a child theme is you can override certain templates. So if you're familiar with the template structure of a theme, there's, you know, like page.php, single.php, you can override those if you want in your child theme, and it won't affect your changes won't get affected when the theme gets updated. So this is what the base style.css file would look like. If you look on the left there in the files, in the little file tree, there's a 2021 theme that comes with WordPress core. And so what I did is created a 2021-child theme. You can call that whatever you want. You can call it foobar if you want, doesn't matter. So we just added that style.css file. And then this comment here is actually the most important. This is kind of what activates. This is kind of what tells WordPress all the information about your theme. So there's a ton of metadata. There's a ton of stuff you can throw in this comment if you've ever created a theme before. But we just try to keep it to the pretty basic ones. So you've got your theme name. Again, you can call that what you want. Theme author, you can call that, you know, you can put whatever you want in there as well. The important one is that line 4 there, which is template. So what you're saying is, this is my parent theme. I kind of wish, I don't know why they chose the keyword template, but here we are. So, and to get that name, if you just if you look on the left, it's essentially the folder name of your parent theme. So if you look at the left, 2021, all one word, is the kind of the slug, the name of the parent theme. So we're going to throw that in there. And then we just threw a version number there. So again, we'll create a functions.php file. This little code snippet here, this is what we're calling enqueuing the CSS file. And like what I said before, is it essentially activating that CSS so it shows on the front end. I won't go over the syntax of this and necessarily what all the parameters are and all that. There's actually a ton of, and quite honestly, if you forget how to enqueue a style sheet, you can Google it. It's there's all sorts of stuff there, but this text snippet will work, or this code snippet will work great for that. So once we do that, then we've got a theme that WordPress can see. And right now in the screenshot, we've got the 2021 theme activated. You'll see the 2021 child theme there on the right then. And right now we're under appearance themes. So if you would have hovered over 2021 child, the little activate button, click that, and then you've got an activated theme. So after that, we just kind of want to show what it looked like to add some CSS to that child theme. So what I did is I just threw something pretty basic in here, which was body background red. So it's if you want to make the whole background of your website bright red, which would obviously be a horrible idea. But this is where you can kind of throw all your CSS then. So you can throw that all in there and just put in whatever you want. And then we did want to throw one little kind of a snippet in here. So this is if you want to shorten the excerpt here, this is a quick little snippet. So if you see line 7 through line 10, that's the little code snippet you can do. And so what this is doing, this is shortening the excerpt to 200 characters. So yeah, so you can just throw that in there, and then it'll be good. And that is all we have. Thanks everyone for listening. Our next meetup is on June 9th at 6 p.m. on Zoom.